the I sense, the ego, ahaṅkāra, in Sanskrit, ahaṅkāra. Notice immediately that the I sense, which is all important to me, everything is about the I. But this I, and I mean the vertical I, not this one, the I, that is also a function of the mind. It's the mind which says I. And it has a function. What does it do? It coordinates. So all the functions of the body and the mind, they're all coordinated by this I function. What it means is, hungry, I am hungry. Sleepy, I am sleepy. Trying to remember, I am trying to remember. So you see, the I is a coordinating function. It appropriates. In Sanskrit, abhimanatmika vritti, a movement of the mind which coordinates all the functions of the body-mind unit. That is called the I. That's also a part of the mind. What is ego? The appropriating function is called the ego. What does that appropriating function mean? Whatever is going on in the body-mind, it is taken up, appropriated, and unified by the ego. You're walking. Walking is going on. But the ego says, I am walking. Eating is going on. The ego says, I am eating. Is the ego actually eating? Not at all. Ego is just a function of the mind. It can't eat, neither can it walk. This ego, the function is to unify all these activities under one head. And that is called appropriating. It takes upon itself everything that's going on there. This is I. A thought arises in the mind. Cookie, want. Then the ego comes in, I want cookie. Cookie comes from memory. Want comes from the mind. And then the ego comes and says, I want cookie. Clearly, it's not the real you. The real you is the Atman, the consciousness. It is just a function of the mind. If you say the mind is different from me, the mind includes the ego. When I say I identify myself with that I. We don't think we are the witness consciousness. We think we are the ego. We think we are that. Here I am. I use the word I for myself. But let me ask you, do you experience the I? This is the crucial question. Do you experience your ego? If you sit quietly and do you feel I? Do you feel that? All of us, when we look into the mind, do we feel the ego? Yeah, we can say I. With confidence, we can say, yes, I am sitting. Do I feel that? Yep. I am listening. Yes. So the ego is something that is experienced. If it is experienced, it is the seen. And you are the seer of the ego. Do you see where I'm going with this? The ego is the seen. And you are the seer of the ego. Otherwise, it wouldn't be experienced. If it is experienced, it's an object just like this. Even the ego, even the I is an object. Even that is an object. You are not the ego. You are not the ego. The ego shines in your light. We get identified with the ego and we think we are the ego, and the rest of it flows immediately. The ego is identified with the mind, and the ego is identified with the body, and then we think we are the body and mind. This is how the mechanism works. The human being is understood to have three aspects. Normally we talk about body-mind, but here there are three aspects of the human being. We have three aspects. One is the body. In Sanskrit it's called sthula sharira, gross body. By which I don't mean that the body is necessarily gross. It just means physical body. Gross body means physical. And then inside this, pervading this body, is what is called the subtle body. The subtle body, in Sanskrit, sukshma sharira. Again, not theoretical. It's not something that is you will read in philosophy with what is it, we mystified. No, it's very simple actually. Here is the physical body, the gross body, check. And look inside. You have thoughts, feelings, ideas, memories, desires. All of that, what we call the mind, that's the subtle body. That's simply what is called the subtle body. Beyond that, again, they talk about in Vedanta of a causal body. I'm not mentioning that now because he has also not mentioned it here. And beyond that is actually our real self, which is pure consciousness. Now, all these questions which we had, all these questions, why does consciousness seem to vary? Waking, dreaming, sleeping, unconscious, tired, alert. Consciousness seems to vary, but actually it's explained with the help of the subtle body. It's the difference in the quality of the mind. Sometimes the mind is agile and sharp and sattvic. Sometimes the mind is dull and tired. That's why consciousness seems to vary. It's not that consciousness varies. It's like your face is reflected in different mirrors. Now, if a mirror is particularly bright and clean, you'll have a very nice reflection of your face. If a mirror is dirty or misty, you'll have a vague reflection of your face. Exactly in the same way, consciousness, your real face is same. Your real face is unchanging, but the reflections are different. Consciousness remaining one and unchanging, depending on the state of the mind, you will seem to feel more conscious or less conscious, more alert or sleepy or unconscious. So the reflection of consciousness changes depending on the mind. Consciousness itself, your real nature, is unchanging. That's the explanation. In fact, we will see in a series of verses, all these questions will be taken up and explanations will be given. All of these explanations are on the basis of the subtle body. Even before I go into the verses, I can give you a little more detail about the subtle body. If you want a little more detail, if you look at the paradigm of the 5 sheets, panchakosha, then the annamaya, the food sheet, that's the physical body, the gross body, which is made of food, what we eat and drink. Then the pranamaya, the vital sheet, the manomaya, the mind sheet, the vijnanamaya, the intellect sheet. These 3 are called the subtle body, sukshma sharira. The subtle body itself has different components. In fact, if you want to split it up further, go further down into detail, in the Prashna Upanishad, for example, the subtle body is supposed to have 17 parts. Pretty easy actually. 17 parts are 5 sense organs, 5 motor organs, the 5 pranas, prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana, the 5 pranas, and the mind and the intellect, manobuddhi. If you make it mind, intellect, memory and ego, it becomes 19 parts. But whatever, 17 or 19, that's the subtle body. And that's what we continuously feel inside as the mind. Now, let's go into these verses. Questions which come to our mind will be answered here. Verse number 10. It will be nice if we can chant along. So I'll chant and you follow me. Verse number 10. ahaṅkāralaye suptau, ahaṅkāralaye suptau, bhavet deho'pyacetanaḥ, bhavet deho'pyacetanaḥ, ahaṅkāra-vikāsārdhaḥ, ahaṅkāra-vikāsārdhaḥ, svapnas-sarvastu jāgaraḥ, svapnas-sarvastu jāgaraḥ. Here the question is taken up that if consciousness is one and continuously shining, then what is sleep? What is dream? What is waking? Normally we loosely sort of speak of 3 states of consciousness, but actually if you strictly follow Vedanta, these are not 3 states of consciousness, these are 3 states of the mind: waking, dreaming and deep sleep. So here it's said here, if you look at it, instead of saying the whole mind, the author here uses only the ego, ahaṅkāra. Here he says, when the ahaṅkāra, the ego is resolved, when the ego is not functioning. And say, when is that blessed state when the ego is not functioning? We all get it. Every time we fall asleep. In deep sleep, when you're not dreaming, in deep sleep, you don't have the feeling, you have no feeling at all. You don't feel that I am sleeping. If you have the sense of I am sleeping or not sleeping, the I sense, the ego sense is dissolved in deep sleep. Try to imagine what it is like to be in deep sleep. We go into this state every day. Every night we fall asleep into a deep, dreamless sleep. In Sanskrit it is called sushupti. Clearly you don't have a sense of individuality there, that I exist. So the ego is dissolved in deep sleep. Whenever the mind throws up an I function, I exist. And that will always be a sentient I, conscious I. Because you, the pure consciousness, witness consciousness, you are shining upon your mind. So the I feeling in the mind will always appear as a shining eye. When will they be? When will they go? When the mind stops functioning, when you turn the mirror and put it down, face down, there will be no reflection. Similarly, in deep sleep, when the mind shuts down, there is no I feeling. There is no I feeling. We do not feel I am sleeping. Then you are not sleeping. So there is no I feeling at that time because the mind has shut down, and hence the reflected consciousness is also not there. So you don't feel I am a conscious being in deep sleep. It explains why in deep sleep, though we are pure consciousness, yet we do not feel like a conscious being in deep sleep. Then the ego, when it is half functioning, that's called the dream state. And the ego, when it is fully alert and awake, that is the waking state. Generally in Vedanta, instead of saying just the ego, we say when the mind is resolved, it's deep sleep. When the mind is half awake, half functioning, we have dreams. And when the mind is more or less fully functional, we have the waking state. So instead of saying the whole mind, here he is using ego, ahaṅkāra. But basically it means the same thing. So this answers the question, if I am an unchanging, ever-shining consciousness, how is it that I get waking, dreaming, and deep sleep? Waking, dreaming, and deep sleep depend on the functioning or the half-functioning or the non-functioning of the mind or the ego, not on consciousness. So when you are awake, the mind is fully functional, connected to the body, your consciousness illumines this fully functional mind connected to the body. When we sleep and dream, we lose touch with the sleeping body, but in our minds we generate a world of dreams, and consciousness illumines that world of dreams. And when the mind shuts down in deep sleep, consciousness illumines the darkness of deep sleep. In fact, you might say that's a strange way of thinking of deep sleep. We normally think that, common sense says that in deep sleep we are not conscious. But Vedanta says in deep sleep we are conscious. In India, in fact, in one of our ashrams, there was a conference on consciousness. Neuroscientists and philosophers and so on. And they couldn't really agree on what deep sleep was. Finally, one of the philosophers, a Sankhyan philosopher, who's American by the way, he asked this question to a neuroscientist. He asked, "Doctor, according to neuroscience, is there consciousness in deep sleep?" And he said, no. The way we define consciousness, there is no consciousness in deep sleep. And this Sankhyan philosopher, he said, well, according to Vedanta, or even Sankhya, in deep sleep, there is only consciousness. You might find that mystifying. We think the deep sleep, no consciousness. We actually say in deep sleep, there is only consciousness. The objects of consciousness are not there. So you do not have experiences. It's like, somebody gave a very nice example. A car climbing up a mountainside in the dark. In the headlights of the car. In the headlights of the car, you can see insects flitting by. You can see raindrops if there is rain and so on and so forth. As the car goes up to the peak of the hill and the lights shine out into the dark sky to infinity, the lights shine out there. Since there is nothing, if the sky is clear, there is nothing to reflect that light. It will look like there is no light at all. You see what I'm saying? When the light is focused out into darkness and there's no mist or anything like that or rain, and it's a dark night, the light, because it is not reflecting anything, it will seem like there is no light at all. It seems like darkness. For example, in space right now, out there, it seems like darkness. Sunlight is streaming through that. When a comet passes through it or a satellite passes through it, then you see it twinkling. Otherwise, it seems like darkness. Exactly like that, in deep sleep, it looks like nothing, like darkness. But Vedanta says consciousness remains there, constant. Because the mind is not functional, you have no experiences. I like to put it this way. Deep sleep is not an absence of experience. It is an experience of absence. Yeah. You experience the nothingness. Only thing is the mind is not there, so you don't feel that I am experiencing nothingness. You don't feel that. So this is the verse. ahaṅkāralaye suptau, in deep sleep, the ego is resolved. Bhavet deho'pyacetanaḥ, and the body also becomes as if unconscious. Remember the mechanism which we read. Consciousness is reflected in the ego. Through the ego, the mind appears to be conscious, the ego appears to be conscious, the mind appears to be conscious, all the way down to the body. The body appears to be conscious. Right now, it feels like a conscious body. But when the ego is resolved, there's nothing to reflect consciousness anymore. And so you don't have the experience of a conscious mind, you don't have the experience of a conscious body also. So the body also appears to be unconscious. When the mind goes to sleep, we don't see any reflection of consciousness there. And then we feel that there's no consciousness, but the pure consciousness is exactly the same. And that's what he says. The states of consciousness are really not states of consciousness. Consciousness has no states. The states are states of the mind. Waking is a state of the mind. This is commonly used, waking state of consciousness, dream state of consciousness. No harm in using it, but as Vedanta students, we should know exactly what we are talking about. It's okay to speak about the waking state of consciousness, but we should know we are speaking about the waking state of the mind. The mind is changing. Mind gets energetic. The mind gets dull. The mind gets tired. The mind goes to sleep. So there's a waking state of the mind, there's a dream state of the mind, and there's a deep sleep state of the mind. These are states of the mind, not states of the consciousness. The consciousness is always there, watching. Just like Swami, I think I mentioned this, the train example. We have this big train in India called the Rajdhani Express. And Swami Nisreshanji, who used to come from South Africa, I have not seen him, but our senior Swamis told me, he had this wonderful way of explaining Vedanta through stories. So he says, when you go to the platform, there's the station master standing on the platform, and there's a lot of hustle and bustle. Why? This VIP, this big train, this prestigious train is coming into the platform. And the express comes in, and the people get out of it, people get into it. There's a lot of commotion, a lot of transactions, a lot of things going on. After some time, the station master is watching. After some time, the train leaves the platform. The station master did not come with the train, did not go away with the train. After some time, another train comes in. It's a goods train. It's a freight train. And there's hardly anybody who gets on, who gets off. It's just the train driver who gets down, maybe has a cup of tea. And then again, the train leaves the platform. Station master did not come with the train, did not go away with the train. And there is no train in the platform. It's blank. Station master watches the empty platform. Just like that, our waking state arrives in the morning. As the alarm rings, the Rajdhani Express pulls up to the platform. So much activity. You have to get up and you have to get ready and go to office and get the kids ready for taking them to school. And you have a mortgage and you have taxes and you have expectations. Today is the day I get my salary or I get my promotion. Today is the day then I'm looking forward to that donut or coffee in Starbucks on the way to. It's the Rajdhani Express. So many people, good and bad, and it's your life, Rajdhani Express. Come back in the evening. And at night, lie down to sleep. The Rajdhani Express departs the platform. The waking world disappears. And in its place comes a vague dream world. The goods train pulls up. Not so much happening, not so clear and bright. You are the watcher. And then the goods train pulls out. The dream also disappears. Nothing. You are the watcher of that nothing too. You exist. But you are not that body. You are not the mind also. The mind also has shut down. You are still there. Not you as Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so. Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so is the identity of the body. Not you as the individual jiva with knowledge, memories, feelings, desires, expectations. That is the subtle body inside. Even that has shut down. You are the pure consciousness which you always were. Ahaṅkāra-vikāsārdhaḥ. When the ego is half functional, svapnaḥ, dreams. And when the ego is fully functional, sarvas, jāgaraḥ, waking. Simple enough. So this is an explanation of waking, dreaming, deep sleep. Though consciousness is constant, because of the changes in the mind and the ego, you have these three experiences. Verse 11. Ahaṅkāra-vikāsārdhaḥ, ahaṅkāra-vikāsārdhaḥ, Chitichāyaikyamāgata चितेच्छायैक्यमागता vasana kalpayet swapne vasana kalpayet swapne bodhe akshayir vishayan bahihi bodhe akshayir vishayan bahihi. This verse explains in a little more detail how waking and dreaming take place. So, what happens in waking and dreaming? Mind is functional. Ahaṅkāra-vikāsārdhaḥ. Vritti means a movement of the mind, a modification of the mind. When you say yoga is chitta vritti nirodha, the cessation of the modifications of the mind. So modifications of the mind, they reflect consciousness. Chiti chaya aikyamagata. They become identified with the reflection of consciousness in them. And in dreams, what happens? Vasana kalpayet swapne. The impressions of the waking state are in our mind, and we use them to generate a movie, which we call a dream. It's like watching TV or watching a movie. What's it generated? What's it made of? It's mostly impressions collected from our experiences in the waking state. Those are in the memory, and those are used to generate dreams. What are dreams? The movements of the mind lit up by the reflected consciousness. And the contents are impressions. Vasana means impressions which we have gathered in the waking state. And in the waking state, what happens? The movements of the mind are now connected to the body. So through the sense organs, we see, we hear, we smell, we taste, we touch. In the waking state, we are in connection with the physical world through the doors of our sense perception. And the mind also changes accordingly. So I see a person, and in the mind, I have a vritti, a movement in the shape of that person. I say, okay, I am seeing this person. I hear some words or music, and there is a vritti in the mind, a movement in the mind corresponding to that sense input. And I say, okay, I'm listening to music. This is the waking state, where sense inputs are brought into the mind. They create vrittis, which are lit up by reflected consciousness, and this gives us our waking experience. There's a lot to be said about this. If you go to the Mandukya Upanishad and all, the whole Upanishad is about the waking state and the dream state and the deep sleep state and so on. Basically, what happens in these three states, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. It's like one and the same person. That person goes and opens the door of the windows of his house and trades with the world. He sells goods, he gets in goods. After some time, he shuts the shutters, goes into his living room, switches on the TV and watches a TV program. After some time, switches off the TV, goes to his bedroom and goes to sleep. Now it's the same person, the one who's the businessman dealing with the world. When in the waking state, that's what we are doing. We are dealing with the world. We get inputs from the world and we send inputs back into the world. We act and we react. And in dream state, what happens is we shut down the shutters of the senses and retreat within ourselves and watch TV in our minds. Switch on the dreams and you watch that. Same consciousness. And then after some time, the TV is also switched off. Dreams are also switched off. And this consciousness retreats into the deep sleep state. The mind goes into deep sleep and the consciousness is still the same. Just like the same person was the businessman dealing with the world, was the TV watcher, and is the person sleeping in the bed. It's the same person. In the same way, it's the same consciousness which we are, which cycles through these three states of experience: waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Bodhe akshayir vishayan bahi. Bodhe means awakened state. That means in a waking state. Akshay means by sense organs. Literally, akshay means eyes, but sense organs. Vishayan bahi, external objects. What external objects do we perceive? Rupa, rasa, gandha, sparsha, shabda. Forms. We see forms. Rasa, we taste. Gandha, we smell. Then sparsha, we touch. And shabda, we hear. The 5 sense inputs, they come in the waking state. That's what is said here. So this is an explanation of the waking and the dream state. So this is our life. This is our life. The Panchadashi, probably the work of the same author, Vidyaranya Swami,
who lived in a place near Mysore, in Karnataka. Yes. So there he extends this idea further. He says, this is the story of your day. Which day? Every day. And the story is repeated the next day. Tadvad dinantare, the next day. And then, masabda yuga kalpeshu gatagamyeshu nekadaha. Month. Next month, same story. Same. And next year, the same story. Waking, dreaming, sleeping. And the years pass into decades and the body grows older. The body dies. The subtle body goes to other worlds and there are other lives. But the story remains the same. Consciousness, watching and experiencing through the body and the mind. He says years pass. Eons pass, millions of years. The Hindus have an enormous calendar. A vast sense of time. Millions of years and billions of years are for them one day in the life of Brahma. The creator, the creatrix, or whatever you call it, who created the universe. Just one day. And when Brahma goes to sleep, the world collapses upon itself and there's dissolution. But you, the consciousness, you're still watching that. Yuga kalpeshu gata gamyeshu nekada. Look at the awesome poetry. Millions of years have gone. Universes have been created and destroyed. Gamyeshu. And there are many more years, millions of years to come and universes to be created and destroyed. And lives to live. Unless we get enlightenment. You can go on repeating this. Nothing can destroy us. Nothing can. The worst of tragedies, the most terrible of sorrows, the greatest of catastrophes, which can destroy worlds, has not been able to destroy us till today and will not be able to destroy us. Nothing can destroy us. Nothing can scratch you. So, and it will go on. No deti nastameti samvid esha swayam prabha. Vedanya Swami says, the sun of consciousness neither rises nor sets. Self-effulgent sun of consciousness.
Verse 12. Manohaṅkrityupadanam lingam ekam jadatmakam avasthatrayamanveti jayate mriyate tatha. Explanation continues. The questions that we have about the differences and the changes that take place, all of them are explained by the subtle body. So it says here, one of the well-known names in the Shastras of the subtle body is given here, Linga Sharira. Sukshma Sharira is one name, Linga Sharira is another name. So Lingam, the subtle body, Jaratmakam, it is devoid of consciousness in itself. This is quite amazing actually. We normally tend to think, if nothing else, at least the mind is conscious. But Vedanta says even the mind is not conscious. You are consciousness and you shine upon the mind and the mind appears to be conscious. It is irradiated by your consciousness. Just like the example I gave you about the moon and the sun. We think the moon is a luminous body. And it does. In fact, it serves the purpose of a luminous body. It illumines the earth at night. We can see by moonlight. We talk about moonlight. Poets write poetry about moonlight. But the fact is there is no such thing as moonlight. It's sunlight. Sunlight reflected from the moon, which is illumining the earth at night. Similarly, the subtle body has no consciousness of its own. It is you, the consciousness, you shining upon the subtle body, that reflected consciousness lights up the mind. Mano ahaṅkriti, mind and the ego and the rest of the mind, they are lit up by consciousness. Avasthatrayam anveti. It is this mind which persists through the three states of waking, dreaming and deep sleep. Waking, fully active, dreaming, partially active, and deep sleep, inactive. Not only that, jayate mriyate tatha. This is the one which is born with the birth of a new body, This is the one which experiences death with the death of the body and goes on to other worlds and goes on to other lives. This is the one which has lived many lives, and so on. All these experiences are possible because of this subtle body. You, the pure consciousness, when you identify yourself, when we say, I am this mind, then when the body is born and the mind gets attached to a body, I feel, I am born. When the body decays, ages, and the mind attached to it feels, I am aging. And we, the consciousness, we also attach to the mind, we feel, we are aging. And when the body collapses and dies, this is the one which feels death, this subtle body. And this is the one which goes on to other lives and other bodies.
So, it is the mind which is born, it is the mind which experiences birth with the birth of the body, mind experiences death with the death of the body, the mind experiences transmigration from one body to another body. Will this always go on? It has a stop. It will come to a stop. When the mature mind does not want this game anymore and wants the game of life to stop, in the evening of not a physical life, in the evening of our lives as souls, in the evening of a soul, it feels that the need has come to stop. Is there something beyond this?
So this whole cycle of birth and death, life, growing up, changing, aging, it's because of the body and this physical body and this subtle body. Consciousness itself, which you or I really are, neither is born nor dies, neither does it age. It makes possible all these experiences through the subtle body.